Hello, you wonderful people, and welcome to another episode of Crime Centric. This being a show where I talk about crime dramas that I watch. For today's episode, I'm going to talk about the latest episode of APB. So in this episode, we have Brant going undercover, which Conrad is like super against because it's like, yeah, the fact is it's very dangerous especially because it's like the only way I'd let you go in is if you could have a wire, but it's like if you go in with a wire, you're surely dead because it's just because they typically search for that. Which we have Gideon deciding to kind of find a workaround him is like basically making a special type of wiring device that basically it'll download information, but it'll only send out a signal every 7 minutes. That way it can't be like tracked. That way you can keep in the dark about like him having a wire on. But the problem with that is the fact is that those 7 minutes they won't be in contact with him. They won't know what his status is until they get that recording 7 minutes later and then kind of look through the footage and like, okay, this is what happens. But even then it's like, well, there's no like small enough wire to not be detected. So they decide to open up a jacket that is basically something that at Reeves Industry they were making that basically has wires already all in it. So it's like they, together with Pete, who basically apparently designed his own wrestling outfit, it's like, so they kind of sew together a jacket and everything, which it looks pretty snazzy and everything. I even like one of the bad guys being like, that's a damn good jacket when he's looking at Brant and everything. I was like, oh, is he very suspicious of it? Is he looking at the cameras? I was like, no. It's like just admiring how awesome it is. Even Brant's like, dude, this is a pretty good jacket. He's like, can I keep it? It's like, no, this jacket's worth more than this entire building because the jacket's apparently like worth like $2 million or something like that. I mean, granted, it is kind of like, I mean, not only is it just a regular jacket, it is a jacket that is like got a lot of technology put into it and everything. So at first it seems like everything is going good, but it turns out things kind of take a turn, like a hard turn when it comes out that like, oh, that the dude that they're with apparently stole the guns, and he stole them specifically from the guy that they're trying to bust. His name's Hunter, but the dude, I think his name's Tico, is helping them. So what I couldn't 100% pick up from the episode, I'm assuming it seems like Tico, I'm not sure 100% whether he actually stole the guns because they told him to. Like, he's like, oh, he tells Hunter, he's like, yeah, I got the guns because he told me where they were. So, because even Brant was kind of shocked when he was like, they're like, yeah, the fact is, Hunter was like, my guns were stolen. And then, like, you have Brant kind of looking like, wait, what? So it seems like Tico kind of like, when they probably had Hunter, like, what? Brent probably had Tico like kind of do some investigating. He's like, okay, we know that he's got some guns here, so I want you to check the place out. I mean, granted, they had that whole like shooting guns at the beginning, so maybe Brent and even Murphy knew about it ahead of time. I'm confused on that. So either way, that kind of leads them into a very dangerous situation. And once again, it puts them a step behind because it's like, yeah, the 13th is only getting this information like 7 minutes later, so it complicates things, which Gideon is taking it hard because Conrad basically brought up the fact that it's like, you need to, like, it's like, this is a very dangerous situation. The fact is, a cop's life could be in danger and everything. And Gideon's kind of almost like, I got this. Don't worry. We got this. But, the thing is, like I said, this is still a learning experience for Gideon. Even Conrad's kind of like, yeah, like Conrad knows that like it's still a situation. Not just Conrad, everyone, even Goss and Murphy realize that this is not a very good situation, that things can go wrong, especially with the setup of the fact is that they're getting the footage and stuff 7 minutes later. It's like they bring up the fact is a lot can happen in 7 minutes. 7 minutes is a long time, especially when you're trying to keep your cool, keep your composure, like under like certain like a situation where you're trying to be someone that you're not and everything, trying to keep it being revealed that you're a cop and everything. It's a situation where I feel like Gideon might learn. Like every new situation kind of makes Gideon learn a little bit more. This situation taught Gideon, I'm sure, I mean, it didn't really come up, but I think it should teach him. The fact is, always have a contingency plan. Now, the fact of the matter is, cops will always, I mean, not necessarily always, but I feel like they have it somewhere in the back of their mind. Like, he's always kind of like, we like, hope that things work out, but always be ready. Conrad said, but that's what it was. Be ready for like things having the best option, but also be ready for the worst option. Gideon necessarily didn't think about it like that because for him, he's like, oh, my technology is perfect. This whole system's perfect. It'll work out. No problem. But then it kind of fell apart, which kind of put a lot of pressure on Gideon because it's like, it's something like basically he's like, if something happens to Brent, he's like, that's going to be 100% on me because I'm the one that kind of kind of gave the go ahead to this operation and everything. But it's also because, for Gideon, like, so far in his job, he hasn't. I'm sure that's going to be something that will come up, like, eventually in the story. But currently, he hasn't lost an officer. Yes, Reyes got shot, which that kind of comes up and everything. But it's like, this is the first time, like, he's been in a situation where, like, one of his officers was definitely in danger. And it's like a situation where they can't necessarily track them down because of the whole wiring setup. It's like, yeah, it makes it so that the bad guys can't say, like, oh, he's wearing a wire, but it also makes it hard for them to track. So basically, him and Pete kind of go out. They kind of make a makeshift kind of radio tower to kind of act as a third signal so they can triangulate Brent's location. And he even said something, he mentioned a guy, I forgot the dude's name, but basically it was a name only Murphy would recognize, because apparently him and Murphy kind of go way back. It's kind of just a little small thing that basically him and Murphy, like, him and Murphy served under the same officer back in the day, or the fact is that they were partners in the past, something of the sort like that. So it's like, there was like a particular guy that one of the first cases together they dealt with a meth head, and it was like that dude's name, and it's like, okay, so in her mind it was like, okay, remembering the case, it's like, yo, Brent was kind of giving us like a key to be like, yo, not to do this, kind of find a different way in. And so fortunately, everything did work out in the end, but it's a situation where Gideon was like, it kind of make him go, because it's something also Murphy said to him, is like, the fact is, this isn't on you. We're kind of partners in this whole situation. Cops, we look out for each other. So the fact of the matter is, in a situation like this, in a circumstance like this, it's not just you that this comes back on. This is all of us. We're all in this together. So if things do go sideways, it comes back on them, not just Brent. I mean, not on just on Gideon. So we're kind of in this together, so don't take it all on yourself. But even Gideon was kind of like, yeah, my technology, yeah, it's pretty amazing. But he's like, the fact of the matter is, it's not just the technology. It's something, he's like, people always kind of think because I am such a techie dude that I don't care about people. I do. Because it's like, I mean, if he didn't care about people, he wouldn't be where he is right now, because Sully's death is what pushed him to do this circumstance, to get justice for his friend. And now, it's like, so he's like, because he even said himself, like, everyone in the 13th is his partner. It's like, we're kind of in this together. So it's like, he even goes, the fact brings everyone out. Like, the fact is, everyone played their part in this case and everything, showing that it's not just his technology. It's kind of what Murphy said to him in the very beginning. And it's something, obviously, we play in the intro. It's like, gadgets are fine and everything, but it can't replace cops. And that's a key point he learns in this too. It's also like, yeah, that the fact of the matter is, technology is fine and dandy, but under certain circumstances, it can let you down, which is something Comrade was basically talking about, how, like, computer systems that basically is telling a story about how, like, there was a computer system problem, and basically that computer system kind of jeopardized a case and almost made it so they had to let a very bad guy go. So it's like, don't put too much faith in machines, because they can easily fail you. So you always kind of have to go back to the fact is, machines are fine. Machines kind of should be used more so not as a crutch, but an extension of a person. It's like, yeah, technology is great, but also only let it be an extension of what's already established with the cops. They're very good cops. So this tech will also help make them even better, keep them even safer. So also, I kind of feel bad for that dude, Tico, who ended up dying. The moment he let it out, he's like, you have all my, he is a cop, so you're telling me the truth. You have all my guns, and they're all at your place, right? The moment he says, like, you're dead, aren't you? He's like, okay, thanks, you. And shot him. I was like, I'm not surprised, because it's like, it's bad guy 101. The moment the bad guy knows exactly what he wants, you're no longer necessary, so you're disposable, so. Another part of this episode, kind of continuing the storyline, is the fact is that Scott shows up and he's asking all these questions, obviously trying to get to figure out whether this whole program situation is quote unquote working. And he ends up investigating Reyes. He's, as I mentioned earlier, that's the cop who got shot in the first episode. Mainly, it was kind of his own fault. But obviously, like, he's trying to, Conrad's like, yo, just remember, go in there, keep your eyes wide open, just stay focused and everything. And it's like, remember what side you're on. It seems like a situation where Conrad was kind of basically like, essentially, don't let this all kind of get shifted on to Gideon. Essentially, kind of like, Gideon might be the rich guy behind all this, but he's still kind of one of us. He does look out for us. He does actually care for us. So I think in his own way, that's Conrad's way of, because, things going down with Gideon it's kind of the same situation. It's like, it won't just affect him. It would affect the 13th district, because maybe if Gideon gets shut down, that means they'll actually shut down the 13th district, maybe the precinct. Maybe they won't actually, I mean, it might not be a situation of just kicking Gideon out, which it could be, but it could also be like, oh, the fact of the matter is that you all participated in this. You're all just as guilty. So I want you to all return your badges. I mean, that's obviously the extreme route. But like I said, with the way the mayor acted in the first episode and this kind of almost necessarily a witch hunt type of situation, which I say technically, you could look at it like that, playing devil's advocate and everything. So you could be like, yeah, those extreme measures could be happening at some point, but nevertheless, like obviously Reyes had his moment of like obviously we never really find out 100% what's in his statement, but obviously like because Scott makes him relive the whole situation and it kind of makes him almost have like a panic attack. He's nervous. He's like, I got to get some air, and he's like, dude, this is all your fault because you're making me remember this. Because he's asking all these questions like, oh, did you feel uneasy with the tech? Essentially, was it Gideon's fault that you got shot? Was it the technology that make you uneasy, catch you off guard, stuff like that? Which, obviously, hearing Gideon talk about them like that, like the fact of the matter is it's the team, it's the officers themselves, that made this whole situation happen, and that Brent is kind of coming back to him. It kind of made, I think, Reyes see Gideon in a different light, or at least kind of reflect on the situation a little differently. So he's like, I kind of have to change my testimony. So I'm thinking he probably blamed Gideon a little bit more. I think it was a situation where even he admits, he's like, yo, I'm a rookie. He's like, oh, so it's not the fact is that Gideon's technology that make you like that. I think it was more so like, I mean, either way, I personally don't feel like that, because even Murphy was like, and even I would admit, it's like, he got a little too zealous. He's a rookie and everything, and he kind of put himself in that situation. It's like, it's not necessarily Gideon's fault. He himself got too hyped up. You wouldn't see anyone, like, I think it was Goss and Murphy that were with him, and they weren't like that, because even Murphy's like, yo, Reyes, pull back. But he didn't listen. He was too hyper and too willing to go, as far as he did. So he kind of put his own life. So I don't know whether it's a situation where it's because he's just looking at Gideon from a different light, but also because it might be a situation where he's like, it made him kind of reflect, and it's like, nah, like that was 100% my own decision. It's not like Gideon forced me up there. It's not like Gideon told me to do that. It's like I did it of my own volition. Which Scott was kind of like bleh about, because, he wants some damning information against Gideon, which Murphy's like, yo, why are you even here, Scott? He's like, I'm here for the mayor. It's like, obviously, I know the mayor wants you here and everything, but it's like, why are you taking such an interest in it? It's like, is this really about it? It's like, it's not. He's like breaking it down. It's like, Gideon doesn't know what the hell he's doing. The fact of the matter is he's breaking a lot of rules, and the fact is that he's like, Gideon's acting like he's above the law, and it's like someone has to tear him down. All these people are bowing down to him, acting like he's so great. It's like, I won't do that. He brings up the fact is that, well, once again, not following protocol and following the law. Fact is that he's doing a whole drone situation. Like, basically, he's accessing a lot of information he shouldn't have access to. It's kind of outside of his purview of being like, oh, you're legally allowed to have this, and that. Like I said, I think I even brought it up last episode. Is that technically legal, what he did with the whole chair situation of kind of reading someone's biometrics? Like, is that technically legal? I mean, you'd have to probably go through the proper channels to do something like that, but it's kind of on the spur of the moment. I mean, granted, who knows, maybe he did go through the proper channels. It seemed like kind of a spur of the moment thing, but it's like, it's such a weird situation. There's no precedence like set for it, so it's kind of like, how can you really judge it? It's kind of what kind of goes along the same lines that Scott brings up in this episode, that like, oh, people feel like their rights are being violated, especially because he has drones flying around. It's like people are spying on people. There's lawsuits pending too, because because a lot of people could, especially bad guys, can use like Gideon's whole situation as a technicality to get out of their situations and stuff like that. Also bringing up the fact is that also from a different point of view is like the APB app. Some people feel like, oh, the APB app is very picky about who people who get their calls responded to or get answered to, which, to be fair, it is just one district, and that's a lot of people to really be answering to, but it's like on a daily basis, you're kind of have to answer to those people anyway. Now they just have a more direct line to you. So, I mean, it's kind of a give and take with that whole situation, but it's like, you can understand like, yeah, my needs aren't being met. It's like, oh, so other people's situations are more important than mine. Mine just kind of fall to the back. So, like I said, he has valid points, but it does, like, obviously, like, even he's saying, like, even Murphy's like, you obviously have an agenda. He's like, I'm just doing my job. I'm doing what's right. And even when she's like, yeah, you might think you're doing what you're doing is right, but that doesn't necessarily make it right just because you think it's right. So, like I said, it's a situation, it's a very gray area situation because you see both sides of it. Like, obviously, as a watcher of the show, you kind of want to side more with Gideon because that's just how stuff like this works because he's main protagonist and you see what he's trying to do. Like, obviously, he's going about things a different way, but that doesn't necessarily make it wrong. But at the same time, you do see, like, the fact is he kind of has a little too much power, and it's like, that's the whole reason why checks and balances are there to keep everyone protected, to keep everyone in balance, to make sure no one gets too powerful. And it's like, with this circumstance, is like, maybe you could look at it as like the police are getting too powerful. So, like I said, just me playing devil's advocate in the whole conversation, which I did what like when Murphy was basically like, when it comes down to it, only, like, I love my son, I love my mom. Other than them, the only other thing I love is the 13th district. And basically like, yo, you come after Gideon, you coming after me. I'm like, oh, Murphy, hell yeah. I was super hyped. I was like, because I'm very curious. I'm sure we kind of get an answer to it. What led to their, we kind of got an answer last time of like why her and Scott didn't work out, just because it's like, she kind of felt like, well, like I said, like it seemed like it was kind of a cheating situation, but also because it's like, for him, she was nothing more than a way, kind of arm candy while he worked his way up the ladder. That he has his own political agenda, just, so, and it's like, I guess in her mind, it's kind of a situation where it's like, I guess me and your son don't necessarily fit in that. So, I don't know. A very good episode. So, like I said, things are kind of heating up on that front. So I'm definitely, like brought up last episode, whole Ada situation, I'm definitely waiting for that to kind of come back around. Like, I know that's going to bite them in the ass, and I just don't know when exactly. So, it's interesting seeing that story kind of progress along. So, I'm very interested to see what goes on next episode. But really, that's all I want to talk about in this episode. Till the next time we meet, be happy, be safe, live life to the fullest, and enjoy it. Good day and goodbye.